we'd like to introduce the two individuals who are the faces of Inside Sports, Mr. Todd Blackstock and Angella Sharpe.
Sometimes here. Yeah. This is an awkward transition.
I did want to introduce Angela. Angela, I'm sure everybody sees her around town. You've seen her 10 years at the Blues game, up on the Jumbotron doing in-game interviews. She holds that distinction right now with the St. Louis Cardinals. You'll see her in the pit at Gateway International and in the ring at Guns and Hoses, the Budweiser Guns and Hoses. Co-hosting tonight is the lovely and talented Angella Sharpe. Angela, say it for you.
Oh, thank you. Well, Todd, we're using this now. I am happy to be here. I'm not normally here, but I'm happy to be here with you, Todd, because I love doing some stuff with you, all the awesome things you've let me tag along with, like winter warm-up and the All-Star game and all those kind of fun things. So thank you for having me here today.
How about that? So we've got a great lineup of people tonight. We've got Ed Wheatley. He's going to be up here in a moment. Ed is the Emmy Award-winning author, best-selling author. He's got a new book out about Babe Ruth. He's written, along with some other people, the Wrestling at the Chase. We've got Herb Simmons here from Southern Illinois Championship Wrestling. We got a couple of wrestlers here. We have some soccer legends in the house. We've got the president of the St. Louis Soccer Hall of Fame, Jim Leeker. We've got Mr. Soccer in the house, Bill McDermott, and two-time Herman Trophy winner, Al Trost. So they're all going to be coming up here. So let's give it up for them. So there's some of the top CEOs in the country. I sit there and I sweep floors with sometimes while we're doing events or stack chairs. And they never want a pat on the back. They don't want any recognition. But you know what? You should be recognized, and you should be very proud. Let's give it up for Celebrate St. Louis, Community Impact Foundation of St. Louis, VPs, and Building Bridges with STL TV. We're going to take a quick break right now. We'll be right back with announcements, and we're going to kick off the show on the 25th anniversary right here at the Celebrate St. Louis Den. Welcome back to Inside Sports. I'm Todd Blackstock. Angella Sharpe's here. And right now we'd like to welcome author and producer, Emmy Award-winning producer, Ed Wheatley. Ed, how are you tonight?
Great to be here. Great to have been a part of it 25 years, whether it's in the Sports Hall of Fame here in St. Louis or St. Louis Browns. Well, we do a lot with y'all.
So Ed, right now, I'm going to have to tell you folks, is almost single-handedly responsible for making the Baltimore Orioles acknowledge the old St. Louis Browns. And Ed, if you could talk us a little bit about the St. Louis Browns, the 1944 World Series, and then maybe how the Baltimore Orioles never wanted to recognize that.
Yeah, Baltimore Orioles don't recognize a team that played in the American League from 1902 to 1953 here in St. Louis, and went up to Baltimore in 1954. They have nothing to do with our organization or the memory, which is really great because, across the world of baseball, there is nothing like we have here in St. Louis with the Brooklyn Dodgers, New York Giants, Boston Braves, Philadelphia A's. We're constantly recognized and asked, how do you do it? And we do it without the support of the Baltimore Orioles. And, in 3 weeks, we're going to have our annual luncheon here at St. Louis, where we're going to relive the memory of Babe Ruth's time in St. Louis, against the Browns, against the Cardinals in the 26-28 World Series, and the great event. His final farewell ever in baseball took place here in 1948, not in Yankee Stadium. It was here in Sportsman's Park the following week. So we got Babe Ruth's grandson coming in. We got George Sisler's grandsons coming in. Hopefully we're going to have Stan Musial's. Well, the best of the Browns, the best of the Cardinals, and the best there ever was. And before that, we'll be over at Gateway Grizzlies on August 14th for our annual Browns night at the Grizzlies, where we'll dress them up in retro uniforms of that year. We're honoring Pete Gray, the one-armed Brown, the one-armed player in the major leagues. This is his 80th anniversary of 1945's debut. So we were very active. We'll have 300 to 400 people at our Babe Ruth luncheon. We have thousands over at Gateway Grizzlies. We just keep the legacy of the Browns. We got nearly 700 plus members from across the country who just love the Browns.
Why is it so important to you to keep that memory of the Browns strong?
Well, if we're the greatest baseball city in America, and we had a rich history of 52 years in the major leagues, and some of the greatest men, baseball's first ever MVP, George Sisler, played on the Browns. The American League's first ever, he was a Beaumont High School graduate, Roy Sievers, the first ever Rookie of the Year in 1949. He was there. So many great men played, but because Baltimore has never done anything, you don't know about them. We're going to make sure they're known. And if you're going to be the best baseball town in America, you got to know your history. I mean, Baltimore doesn't even honor or fly the 1944 pennant. I mean, that's how I get on the radio in Baltimore all the time, and people go, "We don't know what you're talking about. We've never heard this before." So that's why it's important to be the smartest, most educated baseball town in America.
And also, the St. Louis Browns are one of the innovators and trailblazers in the American League of the integration of African Americans into Major League Baseball as well.
Absolutely. Shortly after Jackie Robinson in April 15, 1947, took the field for the Dodgers, Larry Doby took the field on July 5th for the Cleveland Indians to be the first African-American player in the American League. Shortly thereafter, Bill DeWitt Sr., who has a long history as the president and owner of the Browns, he put Willard Brown and Hank Thompson together. St. Louis Browns were the first team, very progressive, to have the first team to have the two African-Americans take the field for their team. And unfortunately, they're like asking, who's the third and fourth man to walk on the moon? Nobody knows. You always only know the first two. And, you know, we had the Brownie Girls Brigade, the only one in Major League Baseball where the girls could get in free after school, like they had the Boys Brigade and the Knothole Gang. That was all boys. Here we had the Girls Brigade. So there's all these great things that, to your question, you don't want to forget these things because St. Louis had this progressive history of baseball of all these different things, and most of it came from the Browns.
What the work you do with inducting those people, how are you picking those people?
We go very we want the whole to be something special for St. Louis. These are the heroes of St. Louis sports. So we go through the contributions they've done. I mean, if you look at...
Is it just sports or is it what they've done
Well,
outside?
we have people who are sports. We look at what they've done beyond sports at times. Sometimes it's athletes. Sometimes it could be owners, you know, team presidents, general managers. It could be the media. So we look and take what we call the blue ribbon panel, go through all this guy. And so it's a tedious process.
I bet so. So you're kind of narrowing it down. That's pretty
That's
good.
correct.
All right, Ed, before we let you go, Ed still plays baseball. He's got a baseball game tonight. It's a rain out, so before we let you go, Ed, talk a little bit about Sportsman's Park and a little surprise that we threw you on your first visit to Inside Sports.
Oh, yeah. You know, Sportsman's Park down at Grand and Dodier.
Thomas Street.
The park that had more baseball games played in than any other park in America because they played every day. The Browns owned the park, and in 1920, when the Cardinals Stadium there at Vandevetter and Natural Bridge, Robeson Field, the last wooden grandstand in Major League Baseball burned down, the Cardinals had no place to go. Branch Rickey had left the Browns, went to the Cardinals. He came over and told the Browns owner, "You're a bad businessman because your ballpark's sitting here empty half the time when you're on the road." So they moved in. All the Browns had to do is say no. Cardinals would have had to leave town because they didn't have any money to build a new stadium. So they had almost 60-plus years of playing together almost every day. And that's where the first time we joined the show, the gentleman you're going to have, Brian Clark, has a special song on the history of Sportsman's Park.
How about that? Everybody, let's give it up for Ed Wheatley.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for coming tonight, Ed.
Nice going.
All right, we're going to take a quick break now. When we come back, we're going to hear from Brian Clark and this wonderful song about Sportsman's Park. Stay with us.
Is it okay to call you Mom? Of course you can.
Kids won't stand, but watch home.
Welcome back to Inside Sports. I am now joined by Wendell Covington Jr. from Community Impact Foundation. For somebody who's never heard about Community Impact Foundation, what would you tell them it is?
Well, we impact St. Louis, 3 pillars. We just want to make St. Louis a better place for all. And we impact the community with community service projects, board leadership to support nonprofits, and then we mentor the next generation entrepreneurs and business professionals.
I love all of that. So we're going to circle back to that in a second. But you started working with the Matthew Dickey's Club a couple years back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I was actually the second permanent CEO in the history of the organization. I replaced Martin Matthews as CEO in 2015.
And what was your work with them like?
Oh my God, it was one of the best positions I've had to develop scholar athletes, to follow in the footsteps of an iconic leader like Martin Matthews. We've enabled so many young people to get to college and professionals. I mean, we developed the Ezekiel Elliott's, the Sheldon Richardsons, the Khalil Colliers, Jason Tate. You know, any athlete who've had success in St. Louis had a lot of their development through Matthews Dickey.
Look at Matthew Dickey. Now, if you haven't, did you take anything that you learned or saw at Matthew Dickey into the community impact?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, Martin Matthews was a master networker and relationship builder, and you can't help young people without resources. And so to be able to provide a pathway to become successful citizens, it takes all of us to help St. Louis be successful. And so he was my mentor, and those are the biggest nuggets that I learned from Mr. Matthews. You know, partner with people regardless of what side of Del Mar you live on, right? Find the people who have a like-minded vision and mission, and then together you can take over the world and make an impact.
I love that you're trying to make an impact and you're still making an impact.
Yes, ma'am.
What is on the horizon for you? Like, what are you looking forward to?
Well, you know, we're looking forward to building new pockets of entrepreneurs here in St. Louis. We're also looking to help the 19,000 nonprofits who need great business executives to serve on their board. And then we also want to support our nonprofit organizations with one-time community service projects. So we've built outdoor playgrounds, we've built irrigation systems, we've built outdoor classrooms, we help with back-to-school fairs, things like that. Our bike build that we do annually every Christmas to support Affordable Christmas for Mission St. Louis. And so again, we want to continue to have the one-time episodic events like community service projects, but we also want to impact systems. We want to help nonprofits evolve beyond being charities and more operating like businesses. And then we also want to empower underrepresented communities to start their own businesses and be successful.
Why is it important for a charity to not operate just like a charity and focus more like a business?
Yeah, because we want them to sustain their success long term. And we want them to be able to build the systems that will encourage donors to give at a higher level. And if donors give at a higher level, then that will enable them to manage and meet their outcomes, which makes St. Louis better for all.
We only have a few minutes left, so we have to talk about, you jumped on the stage, you MIZ'd us all over the place.
Absolutely.
MIZ, what year?
ZOU 93, and I'm not gonna hold it against you that you are not a Mizzou alumni.
That's okay, we're gonna talk
We
about
love you anyway.
We're gonna talk about your football career, even though, what was it like down there?
It was great. I learned a lot. I learned more. It was such a great academic institution.
I like that you swung it that way and not just the football aspect.
Absolutely. I mean, we had some of the greatest professors, because at the end of the day, all of us are going to be former athletes,
Right.
right? Some people say the NFL stands for not for long. But the biggest thing is having being exposed to the high level of academia at Mizzou is one thing that I respect the most.
But there's probably a day or two you remember walking on that field and seeing that crowd and all of those emotions.
Well, I didn't play much, so
It's like BMX. Does that count? You just come out?
the reality is, anytime a kid from East St. Louis gets an opportunity to get a college degree, that's the most exciting thing for me.
I don't think you could. That's the perfect way to end this interview.
Absolutely.
How can people find out about the Community Impact Foundation?
Check out our website, at the Community Impact Foundation, see what we're doing in St. Louis, and look for us in the near future. We're going to take over the world and make St. Louis what it can be.
I love it. I'm sure to be back with more Inside Sports.
I don't know why you're so sad. You've got a roof over your head.
You gotta stop with that depression stuff. That's what white people do. You alright?
It just feels like it's coming from everywhere.
Do you wanna talk about it?
You can talk to me if you're feeling sad.
Whenever you need to talk, I'm here, okay?
All right, I'm out here in the audience of the 25th anniversary Inside Sports Show. I got Herb Simmons, the promoter of the Southern Illinois Championship Wrestling. But more importantly than that, you have every book on the wrestling at the Chase.
Yeah, Wrestling at the Chase. It was a household name in St. Louis and in the Midwest. It started on television in 1959 under the late, great Sam Muchnick. And through his passing, they were handed down to my good friend back at that time, a gentleman named Larry Matasek, who was the play-by-play announcer, the ring announcer for all the matches in St. Louis at Kiel Auditorium or at the Checker Dome. And then when his passing, they were given to me. And this is one I brought along. It dates back to 1950. Some of the oldest programs I had date back to 1934.
Wrestling at the Chase is something that everybody who's into wrestling talks about. Can you put into words why that was so important, why that was so monumental in people's lives?
Well, back at the time when Sam Muchnick came up with the brainchild, he had to have content with Harold Koppler that owned the Chase Park Plaza Hotel. That was a deal that was made on an airplane. They wrote out an agreement on a napkin, and they knew Harold owned the TV studio. He needed content. He knew Sam Muchnick had the wrestlers, and so it was a match made in heaven on an airplane. And they went together and they formed that marriage. And from 59 on television till about 1983, it was one of the top-rated programs. You know, the St. Louis Hawks and them was the only thing that ever outdone them as far as attendance records.
That is fascinating. So you've kind of segued in promoting your own wrestling. Tell me a little bit about this Southern Illinois Championship Wrestling.
Well, it's been around. I promoted my first personal show back in 1973 in Malden, Missouri, and it's just been going from there. I grew up as a fan like all the wrestling fans have, and I've continued. It's been a passion. I've had the love for it. I've worked with all the all-time greats. So in 1973, Larry Matasek, my good friend, and I said, well, we're going to start promoting some independent shows. And he went on. He worked for Vince McMahon at the WWF back then, WWE for a period of about 10 years. I stayed doing the independent stuff, and that's what I do to this day. About 95% of the shows we do are for nonprofit organizations, police departments, fire departments, community organizations, and I've just got a great group of men and women that go out there and bust their butt. And I brought one of them here with me tonight, the Big Texan, one of my former champions.
This is the Big Texan, former champion. All right, so you look kind of menacing. Can you stand up so we can see how scary and menacing you do? Oh, yes. Oh, scared.
Okay, I'm actually scared. All right, wow. I'm frightened. We will be right back with more Inside Sports.
That's a little the spawn of pawns.
Well, I'm scared. Are you okay?
I'm all right. I think. And welcome back to Inside Sports at the Celebrate St. Louis Den, as we're celebrating 25 years, a quarter century of Inside Sports. I'm with Angella Sharpe, and joining us right now is the president of the St. Louis Soccer Hall of Fame, Jim Leeker. Jim, thank you so much for joining us here this evening, and I'm glad you got your yearbook back. And tell us about the state of St. Louis soccer as the president of the Soccer Hall of Fame.
Well, my job as the Hall of Fame is to continue to remember the memories of St. Louis soccer, the 1950 World Cup team, the great teams of Kudus, the great teams of St. Louis University, and even before that, all the great teams that started, really the start of the Hall of Fame, with the 1920 Ben Miller's team that won the National Open Cup. Those are the memories that we still try and carry on to these young kids that are playing the game nowadays. I'm kind of responsible for 1,000 people who've been inducted into the Hall of Fame, and every one of them is a labor of love. I try and find out at least one tidbit about all of them that I could share with people. And
Angela here is a big soccer girl.
Oh, yeah.
She's the sideline reporter for the St. Louis Ambush and some other things.
I see her every game. I see her in every game. Yes.
See each other all the time.
Yeah.
Well, how is it for you being, in charge of the St. Louis Soccer Hall of Fame now that everybody's so invested in City SC?
I'm invested to the point where if anybody starts to talk about the history, I'd like for them to talk to me.
Yes.
But there's one fella that's knows more about St. Louis soccer than anybody. That's no big term. It's Mr. Soccer. We were teammates at St. Louis University, and then we were combatants when I was on the Cootis team, and he was playing for Dave Berwin with the Big Four, St. Philip Neri teams. But we are still very close. He's a member of our committee and speaks so highly. I love him to death. And when he started talking about the 1950 World Cup team, it sends a shiver up my spine. And I've heard it 1,000 times. And every time he starts, so being responsible for those 1,000 people and what's happening with St. Louis soccer nowadays, it brings a sense of pride about what I try and do for the St. Louis soccer community.
Jim, thank you very much.
Todd, thank you very much. No, I want to say thank you for getting my yearbook. I was going crazy. I was asking all my children.
The guest on our show, having left his yearbook at STL TV for over a year. It's got all the Hall of Fame pictures and images in there that are irreplaceable. Where's that? Out of that. Hey, everybody give it up to Jim Leeker. Okay. Take a quick break. Now we come back, we'll be with Al Trost and Bill McDermott after this on Inside Sports.
I, Krista, take you, Jamie, to be my wife.
When we found out that we were pregnant, we were just elated. We were just sitting there waiting for the pediatrician. She said she won't be taking you in as a client.
We are a lesbian couple, but she's just a baby. She's the one you're denying the service to.
Hey, welcome back to the special edition of Inside Sports. I'm Todd Blackstock, and we're at the Celebrate St. Louis Den in the Grand Center area here in St. Louis. Beautiful part of town, and we've got the Community Impact Foundation with Wendell Covington Jr. and STL TV here today, and we've got soccer royalty. We just spoke with Jim Leeker, the president of the St. Louis Soccer Hall of Fame, but joining us now, we've got two of the legendary soccer players and just individuals in the soccer community. We've got Al Trost. Al was the two-time Herman Award winner for St. Louis University. Let's give it up for Al. Al is the head coach of the St. Louis Steamers, who we all saw and loved growing up in the 80s with Don Ebert and Slobo Ilieski and everybody. And of course, who can say anything bad or anything about Bill McDermott, Mr. Soccer? He's probably been to almost every single soccer game with St. Louis University and professionally over the last 30, 40, 50 years, Bill.
Unfortunately, or maybe for good measure, this will be my 53rd year announcing for SLU.
53 years announcing for SLU.
I played there with Al, with Al just a couple years. I was the first year that Harry Keogh took over from Bob Gelker to start coaching the Billikens. By the way, before we go any further, happy anniversary. And Todd Blackstock was the one who, at the time, when it wasn't hip or cachet to talk about soccer and have people like myself and Al on the air, he would do so on a regular basis. So happy anniversary.
Yes.
And another significant anniversary with reference to St. Louis soccer. This is the 150th year of the first organized game here in St. Louis back in 1875.
Wow, how about that, huh? Well, let's talk about Al, Bill.
Yeah.
You know, you've got I'm looking back doing some research, and the Herman Trophy came up in the late 1960s. And I think Al won like the second and third, is it?
Yeah,
Or
2
third and
years.
Fourth.
Yes.
What
It was my
years?
junior and senior year at St. Louis U
So it was like 1969.
and 1970.
1969. So you're like one of the big stars in St. Louis and in the country of soccer when all the things are going down, like Apollo 11. You know, you got Woodstock. You've got, you know, political unrest. Can you talk a little bit about that era, playing in the late 60s, Al, with, you know, just some of the things going on around the world? You know, you're a big stud, long hair athlete, and you're a mainstream individual.
What I do remember is down at St. Louis U and on the campus when things were going around, you know, protests were happening. And, well, Bill will tell you, my main focus was I wanted to go to class and I wanted to play soccer. You know, so I was going to class. I wasn't one of the protesters. That was my goal. So I love St. Louis University. We had a great team camaraderie on the teams, and I think Harry Keough and Val Palacero had a lot to do with that. Our coaches, and it was just a great environment, soccer environment at the time at St. Louis U.
So you won the 1969 and 70 Herman Award, and a St. Louis University soccer teammate of yours won it the next 2 years. Something like that.
Yeah, Mike Siri won the next 2 years. That was in 71 and 72. And then Dan Counts won in 1973. So in 5-part repetition, 5 St. Louis University players won.
And at that point in time, St. Louis University was, you know, ranked probably one of the #1 soccer schools in the nation. It always has been. But at that point in time, what was the run of national championships?
Well, it started with Bob Gelker in 1959. Actually, it was a club team in 1958, Bob Gelker and Bob Stewart. Bob Stewart was the athletic director at the time. But Bob Gelker, along with various people from the CYC, in particular from the CYC, knew that there was this huge stockpile of players literally playing in the CYC. It said there's certainly room enough for a Division I program at St. Louis University. Everything else followed came from directly the CYC, pretty much directly for the CYC. But most especially, Todd, the remark that is most germane to all of this, of the 10 NCAA championships, Al and I are having our shirts, 10 stars mean 10 championships. I would venture to say that 95, perhaps even more so, 95% of those players on those respective teams were all born and raised in St. Louis. Unheard of now.
Thanks a lot, guys. Al Trost, Mr. Soccer, Bill McDermott. Hey, anyway, for everybody out there from Celebrate St. Louis, Community Impact Foundation of St. Louis, STL TV, and all our friends, Angela, I'd like to thank you all for watching and coming out to this great event.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Todd.
All right.
25 more years.
Yeah, 25 more years if we're still alive. And keep watching STL TV. Experience St. Louis!